March 14, 1898. Arklow Harbour, County Wicklow, Ireland. A herring gull builds its nest in the rafters of McGrath Sons Shipyard. Nothing unusual for a coastal town where seabirds outnumber people 3-1. But when apprentice shipwright Thomas Keating climbs the scaffolding to clear the nest, he finds something that makes his hands shake so violently he nearly falls 20 feet to the workshop floor. The nest is woven entirely from human hair. Long strands, short strands, gray, black, auburn, some still attached to strips of scalp. Keating's discovery leads Harbour Master Patrick Donnelly to inspect the newly constructed brigantine the Meridian, scheduled to launch in 4 days. What they find sealed inside the ship's hull would shut down McGrath Sons forever and expose a practice so disturbing, so methodical, that questions would be raised in the British Parliament itself. But the truth was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Before we uncover the truth about the Arklow Shipwright'S Gull and the horror hidden in the Meridian's hull, make sure to subscribe to the Silent Abbey and ring that notification bell. We bring you the darkest corners of history that others won't touch. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community of mystery seekers across the globe. Now let's descend into 1898 Arklow, where progress and horror sailed hand in hand. Ireland in 1898 exists in a state of uneasy transition. Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee celebrations from the previous year still echo through the empire, but in Ireland, the champagne has gone flat. The Great Famine remains a living memory for anyone over 50. The land wars have only recently subsided. Home rule debates dominate Dublin's political discourse while rural Ireland remains trapped between centuries, 1 foot in ancient tradition, 1 foot lurching toward industrial modernity. Arklow, a town of approximately 4,800 souls, sits at this uncomfortable crossroads. The River Avoca meets the Irish Sea here, creating a natural harbor that has sustained the town since Viking times. By 1898, Arklow has transformed into one of Ireland's premier shipbuilding centers. Where once fishermen mended nets, now riveters hammer steel plates. Where grandfathers built wooden fishing boats by hand, their grandsons construct ocean-going vessels using imported machinery and standardized plans. McGrath Sons represents Arklow's success story. Founded in 1851 by Cornelius McGrath, a farmer's son who apprenticed in Liverpool's shipyards, the company survived the famine years when so many others perished. Cornelius died in 1889, leaving the business to his sons Michael and James. By 1898, McGrath Sons employs 147 men and has orders for vessels from merchants in Dublin, Liverpool, and Cardiff. The Meridian represents their most ambitious project yet. A 3-masted brigantine designed for the Atlantic trade, 127 feet long with a beam of 28 feet. She's being built for the Wexford Shipping Company, intended to carry grain from Ireland to England and return with coal and manufactured goods. The contract is worth $3,200, enough to keep McGrath Sons operational for 8 months, but there's pressure. The Wexford Shipping Company has included penalty clauses for late delivery, 50 per week after the March 18th deadline. In an industry where profit margins run thin as Bible pages, such penalties could devastate a shipyard's finances. Michael McGrath, the elder son who manages day-to-day operations, has driven his workforce hard. 6-day weeks, 10-hour days, overtime encouraged, demanded, expected. Men work by gaslight when daylight fails, accidents increase. In January, a carpenter named Seamus Byrne lost 3 fingers to a steam saw. In February, a falling timber broke both of rigger Daniel Walsh's legs. The workers grumble but comply. Jobs in Arklow remain scarce. A man with a position at McGrath Sons counts himself fortunate. Still, something feels wrong at the shipyard. Workers report tools going missing, then reappearing in odd locations. Strange sounds echo from the hull at night, scraping, tapping, something that might be weeping. The ship's carpenter, an old-timer named Patrick Donnelly, refuses to work alone inside the hull after sunset. When pressed, he mutters about bad timber and cursed work but won't elaborate. The other men mock him, old superstitions, sailors' tales, nonsense from a man who still believes in fairy rings and changelings. But Patrick Donnelly has built boats for 43 years. He knows wood like other men know their wives, and he knows something is terribly, fundamentally wrong with the Meridian. February 3, 1898. 16-year-old apprentice Liam Cooney arrives at the shipyard 2 hours before dawn. He's been ordered to prepare the forge, getting the fires hot so the blacksmiths can begin work immediately at 6 o'clock. It's grunt work, the kind given to the youngest, least experienced workers. The shipyard at night is a different place. Shadows pool between the skeletal wooden frames. The half-finished hull of the Meridian looms like a beached whale. Liam lights his way with a single lantern, his breath fogging in the February cold. He passes the Meridian on his way to the forge, and hears something. Years later, when questioned by authorities, Liam struggles to describe the sound. Like cloth tearing, he tells them, or no, like hair being pulled out. You know that sound, when you brush too hard and the bristles catch? He pauses, swallows hard. And breathing, slow breathing, like someone sleeping rough. Liam stands frozen for 5 minutes, listening. The sounds come from inside the hull, from the sealed cargo hold where ballast stones sit waiting for the final launch. No one should be in there. The access hatch has been planked over for 3 days. Liam runs to the forge, builds the fire with shaking hands, tells no one what he heard because who would believe him? He's 16, the low man on every hierarchy, and Michael McGrath has a temper like a spring squall, violent, sudden, and unforgiving. But Liam Cooney never arrives early again, and he begins looking for work at other shipyards. February 17, 1898. 2 workers fail to report for their shifts. This isn't unusual. Men occasionally go on benders, wake up in ditches, miss a day or 2 of work. But these particular men, Dennis Roche and Patrick Sheehan, have been with McGrath Sons for 11 and 7 years respectively. Both are known as reliable workers. Both have families. Both need their wages. Dennis Roche's wife Bridget appears at the shipyard that afternoon, asking if anyone has seen her husband. He left their cottage at 5:30 that morning, same as always, kissed their 3 children, complained about the cold, never arrived at work. Michael McGrath interviews the workers personally. No one saw Dennis arrive. His tools remain untouched. His coat isn't on its customary peg. Patrick Sheehan's situation is identical. Left home at dawn. Never arrived at the shipyard. Vanished somewhere on the half-mile walk between cottage and harbor. The Royal Irish Constabulary opens an investigation. Constable Edmund Burke, a meticulous man with a reputation for thoroughness, questions everyone who might have seen the 2 men. He searches the route they would have taken. He drags sections of the river. Nothing. On February 23rd, 6 days after their disappearance, both men are found. They're in Dublin, working in the docks under assumed names. When Constable Burke brings them back to Arklow for questioning, both men tell the same story. They received job offers from a Dublin shipping firm, better pay, better conditions. They left without notice because they feared McGrath would prevent them from leaving. Michael McGrath is furious. He blacklists both men from every shipyard in Wicklow County. Their families suffer. But the story makes sense, and the constabulary CL oses the case. Except for one detail that Constable Burke notes in his official report but doesn't fully understand. Both men, when questioned separately, mention the same thing. They didn't make the decision to leave until the morning they disappeared. Something happened that morning, something they refused to discuss, that made them walk straight past the shipyard and keep walking all the way to Dublin. When pressed, Dennis Roche finally speaks. I saw where the hair was coming from. That's all I'll say. I saw, and I left, and I'll not go back for any amount of coin. March 2nd, 1898. Dr. Ambrose Fitzgerald maintains a practice on Arklow's main street, treating everyone from merchants' wives to dock workers. He's 63 years old, educated in Edinburgh, and has seen more human suffering than any man should witness. On this particular morning, he receives his 3rd patient in 2 weeks with identical, unexplainable symptoms. First came carpenter Joseph Brennan, complaining of persistent nightmares. I see the hull, he tells Dr. Fitzgerald. I'm working inside it and the walls start closing, and I hear breathing, not my breathing, someone else's, and I wake up screaming. Then rigger Michael Conroy, reporting insomnia so severe he hasn't slept more than an hour at a time in 12 days. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that ship, and there's something in there with me, watching, waiting. Now Thomas Murphy, a sailmaker, sits across from Dr. Fitzgerald describing the same symptoms, nightmares, insomnia, a persistent feeling of being watched, and all 3 men work on the Meridian. Dr. Fitzgerald is a man of science. He doesn't believe in curses or haunted ships, but he does believe in patterns. He prescribes laudanum for sleep. He recommends the men request transfer to other projects. He notes in his private journal, 3 workers from McGrath Shipyard presenting with acute anxiety and night terrors. Common factor, all involved in construction of the brigantine Meridian. Possible exposure to noxious fumes from new paint compounds? Toxic materials and hull sealant? Warrants further investigation. But Dr. Fitzgerald is busy. He has other patients, other concerns. He files his notes and moves on to the next case. He will regret this for the rest of his life. March 14, 1898. Early morning, Thomas Keating is 19 years old, an apprentice shipwright who dreams of becoming a master craftsman. He arrives at the shipyard at 5:30, eager to prove himself worthy of increased responsibility. Michael McGrath has given him a task: clear the herring gull nest from the rafters above the Meridian's construction berth. The birds have been causing problems, dropping waste on the deck, making noise that disturbs the workers. Clear it out before the day shift arrives. Thomas climbs the scaffolding with a burlap sack and a long pole. The nest sits in the junction where two support beams meet, 30 feet above the ground. It's larger than typical gull nests, bulkier, constructed with unusual materials. Thomas can see that even from below. He reaches the nest, peers inside, and realizes he's looking at human hair. Not a few strands, not a clump. The entire nest, 18 inches across, 8 inches deep, is woven from human hair. Hundreds, possibly thousands of individual strands. Every color, every texture. Some still attached to pieces of scalp, gray flesh dried to leather consistency. Thomas Keating vomits over the side of the scaffolding. He climbs down, legs shaking so badly he nearly falls twice. He runs directly to Harbour Master Patrick Donnelly's office, not bothering with the chain of command, not caring about protocol. Patrick Donnelly is 61 years old. He's been Harbour Master for 23 years. He's seen sailors die of scurvy, watched ships sink in storms, pulled drowned children from the river. Nothing shocks him anymore. Until he sees the nest. Donnelly and Keating return to the scaffolding together. Donnelly examines the nest carefully, touching nothing, his face growing paler with each passing second. "Where would a bird get human hair?" Keating asks, his voice barely a whisper. Donnelly doesn't answer immediately. He's thinking. The gull built this nest recently. The construction is fresh, maybe 2 weeks old. Gulls are opportunistic builders, using whatever materials they find near their nesting sites, which means the hair came from somewhere in or near the shipyard. A lot of hair, from multiple sources. "Get Michael McGrath," Donnelly says quietly. "Get him now, and tell him to bring Constable Burke." If this story is giving you chills, hit that like button. We're just getting to the truly disturbing part, and you won't want to miss what investigators found when they finally opened the Meridian's hull. Share this with someone who loves dark historical mysteries. Let's discover what happens next. March 14th, 1898, 8:47 a.m. 5 men stand on the deck of the Meridian. Harbour Master Patrick Donnelly, Constable Edmund Burke, Michael McGrath, ship's carpenter Patrick Donnelly, no relation to the Harbour Master, and Thomas Keating. The gull's nest sits on a workbench, undisturbed, evidence of something no one yet understands. "Where inside this ship?" Constable Burke asks. "Might a bird access to gather materials?" Patrick Donnelly, the old carpenter, speaks first. "There's ventilation gaps in the hull planking, standard practice until final sealing. And the cargo hold hatch was only planked over 3 days past, before that open to the elements." "Show me the cargo hold," Burke says. They descend into the Meridian's belly. The cargo hold is a space 40 feet long, 12 feet wide, 8 feet high at its center. It smells of fresh timber, tar, linseed oil. Ballast stones cover the floor, 2 tons of rocks to ensure the ship sits properly in the water. Dim light filters through the ventilation gaps. Constable Burke lights a lantern. "The bird would have come through the gaps," Patrick Donnelly explains, pointing to spaces between planks where daylight shows through. Looking for nesting material, Burke walks slowly around the hold, holding his lantern high. The shadows shift and dance. The other men follow in silence. Then Burke stops. He's at the forward end of the hold, where the hull curves inward to meet the bow. There's a section here where the ballast stones are piled higher than elsewhere, almost to Burke's waist. "Why are the stones heaped this way?" he asks. Michael McGrath steps forward. I don't recall ordering that." Patrick Donnelly shakes his head. "Ballast should be distributed evenly. This concentration forward would affect the ship's trim." Burke hands his lantern to Thomas Keating. "Help me move these stones." They work for 15 minutes, moving the stones aside, stacking them against the port bulkhead. The pile goes deeper than expected, 3 feet of stones, 4 feet, and then they expose the floor planking. Except it's not smooth. There's a section approximately 6 feet by 3 feet where newer planking has been laid over the original floor. The color is slightly different, the fit slightly less precise. "Did you authorize this repair?" Burke asks McGrath. "No, the floor planking was sound. There was no need." Burke doesn't wait for the answer. He produces a pry bar from his belt. "Mr. Donnelly, help me remove these boards." The planks come up easily. Too easily. They're not properly nailed down, just set in place. The smell hits them first. Not the overwhelming rot of a fresh corpse, but something worse. The sweet chemical smell of partial decomposition mixed with lime and preservatives. An odor that speaks of deliberate concealment. Burke raises his lantern. The space beneath the planking is a cavity carved from the bilge timbers. In this cavity, arranged with almost careful precision, lies a human body. Male, middle-aged, dressed in worker's clothes. The body has been treated with lime to slow decomposition. The face is partially preserved, enough to show features. The hands are missing, severed at the wrists, the cuts clean and deliberate. The scalp has been partially removed, long strips of skin and hair taken from the crown and sides of the head. Thomas Keating runs for the ladder. They hear him vomiting on deck. Patrick Donnelly crosses himself, lips moving in silent prayer. Michael McGrath stands frozen, his face absolutely white. Only Patrick Donnelly seems unsurprised. "I told you something was wrong with this ship," he says softly. "I told you." Constable Burke, to his credit, maintains his composure. He's seen death before, but nothing like this. Nothing so calculated. "Everyone out," he says quietly. "This is a crime scene. No one touches anything. No one enters this ship. Mr. McGrath, I need a complete list of everyone who had access to this vessel during construction. I need work schedules, material invoices, everything." They climb back to the deck. Burke posts Thomas Keating as a guard with strict instructions to allow no one aboard. Then he walks directly to the telegraph office. By noon, detectives from the Dublin Metropolitan Police are on a train to Arklow. The chief constable of Wicklow County has mobilized every available officer. The Meridian is surrounded by constables, keeping back a growing crowd of shocked townspeople. And in the shipyard office, Michael McGrath sits with his head in his hands, repeating the same phrase over and over. "I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand." But someone understood. Someone understood perfectly. When Dublin detectives finally conduct a complete search of the Meridian, they find 2 more bodies sealed in the hull. Both treated identically. Lime preservation, missing hands, partially removed scalps, both hidden in cavities carved into the ship's internal structure. 3 men, 3 workers, built into the vessel they were constructing. The investigation that follows is one of the most comprehensive in Irish criminal history. Detective Inspector James Mallon, a veteran investigator with 23 years of experience, leads the Dublin team. He brings with him 3 detective sergeants, 2 forensic physicians, and a medical photographer. Cutting-edge technology for 1898. The bodies are carefully removed and transported to Dublin for post-mortem examination. Dr. Samuel Gordon, Ireland's foremost forensic pathologist, conducts the autopsies. His findings, documented in meticulous detail, are disturbing. Male, approximately 40 to 45 years of age. Cause of death, manual strangulation. Time of death, approximately 3 to 4 weeks prior to discovery. Identifying features, missing 3 fingers on left hand, old injury, healed. This detail allows immediate identification, same as Byrne, the carpenter who lost his fingers in January. Except Byrne didn't actually lose his fingers to a saw accident, he lost them to murder. Male, approximately 35-40 years of age. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head. Time of death, approximately 4 to 5 weeks prior to discovery. Identifying features, healed fracture of both tibias. Daniel Walsh, the rigger supposedly injured by falling timber in February. Another lie. Another murder. Male, approximately 50-55 years of age. Cause of death, suffocation, likely from cloth gag. Time of death, approximately 6 to 7 weeks prior to discovery. Identification proves more difficult. This victim predates the others and shows more advanced decomposition. Eventually identified through dental records and family testimony as Martin Fahey, a shipwright who left Arklow in early January, supposedly to take a position in Cork. Martin Fahey never went to Cork. Martin Fahey was murdered and sealed inside the Meridian. Dr. Gordon's report includes additional disturbing details. All 3 men show signs of ante-mortem torture. Burn marks. Contusions consistent with repeated beating. Evidence of restraint, ligature. Marks on wrists and ankles. They didn't die quickly. They suffered first. Detective Inspector Mallon conducts interviews with every worker at McGrath Sons. He examines work schedules, attendance records, material purchase orders. He searches the entire shipyard, finding a workshop shed behind the main building that contains evidence of horrific crimes, bloodstains, scraps of rope, tools marked with human tissue. The evidence points in one direction, but the suspect is already gone. James McGrath, the younger brother and company co-owner, disappeared on March 14th, the same day the bodies were discovered. He was last seen leaving the shipyard at approximately 9 o'clock that morning, shortly after Constable Burke began his investigation. A massive manhunt ensues. Police search Arklow, then County Wicklow, then all of Ireland. James McGrath's description is circulated to every constabulary station, every port authority. Ships are stopped and searched, border crossings are monitored, but James McGrath has vanished as thoroughly as his victims once did. What investigators piece together from witnesses and evidence is a portrait of methodical sadism. James McGrath, age 37, unmarried, living alone in a cottage on the outskirts of Arklow. His brother Michael describes him as quiet and dedicated to his work. Workers describe him as stern and particular about details. No one reports anything obviously concerning, but beneath the surface, James McGrath harbored something dark. His cottage, when searched, reveals a hidden cellar. In this cellar, restraints bolted to the walls, blood-stained floors recently scrubbed, and a journal. The journal entries are clinical, detached, describing the murders with the same attention to detail one might use for recording business transactions. James McGrath writes about selecting victims, workers who were unmarried or estranged from family, men who wouldn't be immediately missed. He writes about luring them to his cottage under various pretexts. He writes about what he did to them before they died. The journal contains 23 entries. Police have found 3 bodies. The implications are staggering. 20 other potential victims, possibly sealed in other ships, possibly buried elsewhere, possibly disposed of in ways investigators will never discover. Michael McGrath is brought in for extensive questioning. He's clearly shattered, devastated by his brother's crimes. Detective Inspector Mallon believes Michael is innocent. The evidence suggests James worked alone, conducting his activities during night shifts when his brother wasn't present. But the McGrath family name is destroyed. McGrath Sons declares bankruptcy in April 1898. The Meridian is never completed. The hull is eventually broken up for salvage, every piece burned to prevent any macabre collectors from preserving parts of the murder ship. The workforce scatters to other shipyards. Arklow's reputation as a shipbuilding center suffers. Orders decline. By 1900, only 2 shipyards remain operational in the town. Michael McGrath leaves Ireland entirely, reportedly emigrating to Australia under an assumed name. He's never heard from again. James McGrath is never captured. Sightings are reported for years afterward, in Liverpool, in Glasgow, in New York City. The Royal Irish Constabulary maintains an open warrant for his arrest until 1923, when the formation of the Irish Free State reorganizes law enforcement, and many old cases are administratively closed. But investigators in 1898 develop theories about what happened to him. The most plausible, James McGrath booked passage to America on a ship leaving from Dublin on March 13th, one day before the bodies were discovered. He traveled under a false name. He's somewhere in America, possibly still alive in 1898 when the investigation concludes, living under a new identity. The most disturbing theory, James McGrath never left Ireland. He's simply better at hiding than police are at. Searching. He might be in another town, working at another shipyard, selecting new victims. This theory keeps Irish workers looking over their shoulders for years. The families of Seamus Byrne, Daniel Walsh, and Martin Fahey receive no compensation, no justice, no closure. They bury what remains of their loved ones and try to move forward with the knowledge that a monster walked among them, invisible until it was far too late. In May 1898, Dennis Roche and Patrick Sheehan, the 2 workers who fled to Dublin, finally explain what they saw that February morning. They arrived at the shipyard early, before dawn. They saw lamplight in the workshop shed. They investigated. Through a gap in the door, they witnessed James McGrath with Martin Fahey's body, methodically removing strips of scalp, preserving them in jars of alcohol. They ran, they kept running, and they told no one because who would believe such a story? Who would believe that a respected shipyard owner was a serial killer? Their testimony provides confirmation of what investigators already suspected, but it comes too late to help capture James McGrath. The Arklow shipwright case, as it becomes known in historical records, sends shockwaves through industrial Ireland and beyond. Parliament debates workplace safety and employer oversight. How could such crimes occur in a business employing nearly 150 workers without anyone noticing? The answer is uncomfortable, because workers are expendable, voiceless, easy to dismiss when they raise concerns. The case prompts reforms in how missing persons cases are investigated. Previously, when workers disappeared, police assumed they'd simply left for better opportunities elsewhere. Now authorities are required to conduct more thorough investigations, to question employers more aggressively, to take seriously the concerns of working-class families. The Irish Constabulary implements new protocols for investigating workplace deaths and accidents. The accidents that befell Seamus Byrne and Daniel Walsh should have triggered more scrutiny. Now they would. But perhaps the most significant impact is psychological. The case shatters the comfortable Victorian assumption that monsters are obvious, that evil announces itself clearly, that one can identify threats through simple observation. James McGrath looked like everyone else. He worked alongside his victims. He was trusted, respected, normal. This realization, that predators can be invisible, that they can operate in plain sight, that they can be your employer, your neighbor, your brother, fundamentally changes how people view their communities. Folklorists and psychologists study the case for decades afterward. Why did James McGrath do what he did? His journal provides few insights into motivation. He describes his actions but not his reasoning. He records details but not desires. Modern psychological analysis would likely classify him as a sadistic psychopath with organized serial killer tendencies. But in 1898, such frameworks don't exist. People simply label him evil and move on, unable to comprehend motivations so alien to normal human experience. The case also impacts Irish shipbuilding permanently. Arklow never fully recovers its prominence. Other shipbuilding centers, Belfast, Cork, Derry, attract the contracts that once would have come to Wicklow County. The McGrath name becomes synonymous with horror. Even shipyards that had no connection to the crime suffer from association. By 1920, commercial shipbuilding has essentially ceased in Arklow. Similar cases emerge in the investigation's aftermath, suggesting James McGrath may have inspired imitators or that such crimes were more common than previously recognized. In 1899, workers renovating a factory in Glasgow discover human remains sealed in the building's foundation. The investigation stalls due to decomposition, but parallels to the Arklow case are unmistakable. In 1902, a shipyard in Cardiff reports a worker missing. Other work. RS report concerns about a foreman's behavior. Authorities investigate aggressively, learning from Arklow's mistakes, and discover the missing worker's body before it can be concealed. The foreman is arrested, tried, and executed. In 1907, renovations on a warehouse in Liverpool expose a cavity containing 3 bodies. The building's former owner had died in 1904, taking his secrets with him, but witness testimony and records suggest a pattern similar to James McGrath's crimes. These discoveries suggest the Arklow case wasn't unique, just uniquely exposed. How many other builders, how many other employers committed similar crimes that remained forever hidden? The question haunts Irish workers for generations. The case also influences literature and folklore. Elements appear in stories and poems, transformed into morality tales and ghost stories. The Meridian becomes a legendary cursed ship, even though it never sailed. Tales circulate about James McGrath becoming a vengeful spirit, doomed to wander shipyards forever, seeking victims he can no longer claim. These stories serve a purpose. They keep the memory alive, warn new generations of workers to stay vigilant, to report suspicious activities, to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. Descendants of the victims carry the trauma forward. Byrne, Walsh, and Fahey family members struggle with the knowledge that their ancestors didn't simply die. They were tortured, murdered, desecrated, and sealed into a ship like cargo. Some leave Ireland entirely, unable to remain in a country that failed to protect their family members. The physical evidence of the case, James McGrath's journal, the photographs from Dr. Gordon's autopsies, the tools found in the workshop shed, eventually ends up in Dublin Castle's Criminal Records Archive. Much of this material is destroyed during the Irish Civil War in 1922, when the castle's record offices are damaged by fire. What remains, scattered witness testimonies, newspaper accounts, official reports, provides just enough information to reconstruct the story, but many details are lost forever. Modern historians and criminologists who study the case note several chilling facts. James McGrath's journal mentioned 23 victims. Only 3 bodies were recovered. If he was telling the truth, 20 more victims remain missing. Some might be buried on his property. Some might be sealed in buildings or ships that still exist today. Some might have been disposed of in ways that left no recoverable evidence. The herring gull that built its nest with human hair was never found. It flew away before investigators could capture it. One likes to imagine it carrying some fragment of the victims with it, a burial at sea they never received, a memorial nature provided when humans failed. The case demonstrates how industrialization created new opportunities for predators. In pre-industrial communities, everyone knew everyone else. Disappearances were immediately noticed. But in industrial towns where workers migrated seeking employment, where shipyards employed hundreds, where people came and went constantly, it became possible for individuals to vanish without triggering immediate alarm. James McGrath understood this. He selected victims carefully. He exploited gaps in social structures. He weaponized the very progress that was supposed to improve Irish lives. And he got away with it. Somewhere, possibly in America, possibly under a new name, James McGrath may have lived for decades after his crimes. He may have died in bed, surrounded by people who never knew what he'd done. He may have continued killing, adding more victims to his tally. We'll never know. What do you think drove James McGrath to such acts? Was it simply sadistic pleasure, or was there some deeper psychological wound that transformed him into a monster? Could he have been stopped earlier if workers' concerns had been taken seriously? Leave your theories in the comments below. Our community always has fascinating insights into these dark historical mysteries. If you want to explore more cases of industrial age horror and the predators who exploited progress for evil purposes, subscribe to The Silent Abbey. Ring that notification bell so you never miss when we uncover another lost chapter of history. The Arklow Shipwright'S Gull reminds us that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like successful businessmen. Sometimes they work beside us. Sometimes they're building the future while simultaneously destroying lives. Remember, vigilance isn't paranoia, concern isn't hysteria. And when something feels wrong, when your instincts scream danger, listen to them. The workers who fled, who refused to ignore what they saw, survived. Those who rationalized away the warning signs didn't. Until next time, stay curious, stay careful, and remember that the past has lessons for those willing to learn them. See you in the next video.